Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. To ring out 2023, we have decided to each watch a film that released in the last year by some of our very, 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 very most favorite people, neither of which was very good. And then we'll talk about other films by those people that we do think are very, very good and thus justify our love of these people. I have chosen Rani Mukerji. So my film is Mrs Chatterjee versus Norway. Pitu has chosen, of course, Sunny Paji. And her film is, of course, Gadar too.
Yes.
Oh, I don't even know where to start.
I
Um,
just want to say that me being an eternal pessimist has paid off because when Beth said, you know what we should do? We should talk about our favorite stars and like their releases in 2023. I was like, okay, but your favorite star did Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway and mine did Gadar too. Can we please, to balance it out, also talk about their favorite, like our favorite performances of theirs? And that idea has paid off because Gadar 2 was not a good experience, Beth.
I'm sure. Please. So I need to say right here, I've never seen the first one. I know that I need to. Uh, I believe I've seen the hand pump though,
Mm.
if I recall my locations correctly. Um, and then, of course, I've not seen the second one. It did play in the theater here, but that is not something I want to go see by myself.
No.
As we discussed when this was in the theater, you were saying you really wanted to go with a crowd, and then that didn't happen. So here you are watching it at
No.
home for the podcast on a December Monday. Uh, I mean, the film was very popular, but
It's
ooh,
terrible. It is terrible.
go
It
for it.
has
Tell me
no
why.
story. It is awful. There is no screenplay. There is very bad direction. Amisha Patel just simpers throughout. Also, this movie is such a bait and switch because obviously they made this movie to bring the Sunny Deol fans to the movie theater. Here's the problem though. Within 15 minutes of the movie beginning, Sunny Deol is kidnapped and so therefore he is actually missing in action for most of the movie, and you actually have to see Utkarsh Sharma, who is the son of the director Anil Sharma, when he tries to go and rescue his father. And I was like, okay, first of all, Sunny Paji does not need rescuing. How dare you? Excuse me. But also, I want to watch Sunny Paji. I don't want to see Utkarsh Sharma's mug. So it is a total bait and switch. So I'm very happy that I didn't see Gadar 2 in the theater because I would have been very disappointed and pissed off. So I did what is known as a PNP sandwich in corporate speak. So a PNP sandwich is when managers want to give bad feedback, like negative feedback to their direct reports, but they cushion it. So they
Yeah.
say something positive, then they say the actual meaty, like bad things like you suck, and then they say something positive to close it out. So I did a PNP Sunny Deol sandwich. I started off strong with Betab. It was great. I loved. I was the hearty eye emoji throughout. Then I watched Gadar 2. It was horrible. And then to soothe myself, I watched Yatim, which is one of my favorite Sunny Deol films. So it was a good PNP sandwich. The only good things about Gadar 2, and there are only two good things about Gadar 2, are Sunny Deol looking absolutely adorable in Urja Kale Kama, which is like a famous song from the original Gadar. He looks darling in it, romancing Amisha Patel. And then the other song is Main Nikla Gadi Leke, the remix version of that. That is also excellent. Everything else is crap. Do not watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there Were there any performances in it that were good? Because sometimes terrible material still has an okay performance.
I mean, no, I mean, Sunny was good, but like he's always good. But also, this movie didn't really play to his strengths. As a bona fide, gigantic Sunny Deol mega fan, I will say that actually his performances where he's just screaming at people and like yelling and the decibel level is high is actually not the Sunny Paja I know and love. He's actually at his best when he just has this like smoldering, quiet intensity and you're terrified of what he's going to say next. Um, so the fact that in Gadar 2, it's like everyone is always shouting all the time actually doesn't make it impactful at all because they're just shouting all the time. So I mean, he did his best. He's very good in the emotional scenes and the dramatic scenes. I mean, no one delivers like, that kind of like rawr kind of speech like Sunny Paji does. And there is a very satisfying scene where he takes this like wagon wheel and like he goes at it. And it's so funny because like there's this like advancing mob towards him. And then they look at the hand pump and they look at him and he looks at the hand pumps. It's sort of like this meta moment where they're like wink, wink. But then he doesn't go for the hand pump. He goes for a wagon wheel and he just like goes berserk with it. That was enjoyable.
Okay.
But all the performances were kind of man stupid. And like, I was like, eh. So yeah, nothing to recommend there. I have far better Sunny Paji movies I would recommend to people.
Um, so as a Sunny Paji newbie,
Mm,
relatively, I've seen a few things here and there. And I actually started Yatim when I got home from work today. I'm about 45 minutes in. There've been no
mm.
songs yet. I was like, how come there hasn't been a song?
There's only like 2 songs in it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not a particularly musical movie.
And I'm kind of enjoying it. I might continue it. I don't know. It has Danny, whom I love.
So
Um,
good. Kulbhushan is great in
I'm
it.
really enjoying Kulbushan in this like friendly dad kind of
Yeah.
he's very endearing. I love Amrish Puri.
Yes.
I very much enjoyed Dalip Tahil for his like 2 minutes before he was killed. Um, so uh yeah, I might finish it. I don't know. The locations are great. Like
So
more
good.
chase scenes through Fatehpur Sikri, please.
Yes. It's really good. You should finish it, team.
Okay, I don't know how they emptied it out to do that big opening scene. That was really cool because it's obviously a tourist location at the time because you can see
Mm-hmm.
stacks of postcards and stuff. But I have been there and it was very crowded. It was
Yeah.
full of people and it was really cool to see it empty. That really added to the drama.
Mm-hmm.
I might finish it. I can't even, I've seen Jeet because of
Oh,
stomping dance. That is
yes, yes.
infamous, at least in my corner of the internet. Um, I can't even remember what else I've seen.
Have you seen Ghayal? I love Ghayal.
No, I
Okay,
have seen
Ghayal is his most famous movie apart from Gadar, I guess.
I have seen Ag Kagola, which is a very funny movie.
I
It's
have not seen that
I
movie.
mean the name alone, right? Like even I
Yeah.
need to know what that means. That's a great name. It's a good shouty name. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I've just really not seen that many of his films. I'm not what I have seen has not really compelled me to see more. I'm obviously much more of a if I have to pick a deal, and you don't have to, you can have all of them,
Right.
but obviously I'm a Dharmendra person. Um,
Right.
but clearly Sunny worked in a way, in some way that was significant for quite a chunk of
Yeah.
um
He was a huge star. I mean, no one does emotional scenes like Sunny Deol does. Like, just, I mean, like, I know Damini, for instance, is a Meenakshi
oh,
Seshadri
I like that one.
vehicle.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Like,
Mhm.
that's a Meenakshi Seshadri movie, and she's clearly the hero of the film. But,
Yeah.
like, it's actually his infamous courtroom scene that's the most famous. Like, that was like, small role that he did, but that was so impactful. He just, when he does, his whole shtick is basically he plays this person who's always very like chilled out. He's always living on a farm for some reason, which is hilarious because the man is born and raised in like Juhu in Mumbai. This is not a village person, but he always plays people who are like on farms, and he's always riding a tractor or a horse, or he has amazing horse riding skills. Every film of his has horses. Betab does, Yatim
So in
does.
the team, he like just gets on that horse with no help or
I
anything
know.
at the
It's
beginning of it.
amazing.
And
He has amazing horse riding skills.
I could not be less of a horse person, but I that was impressive to me. I that was like, oh,
Yeah. There's always dogs in his movies, which I enjoy. So there's always like animal friends in his films. And he's always like this nice person who lives on like a stud farm or a farm or an agricultural area or something of that nature. And he's like, having like a very pleasant and lovely life. And then some terrible thing happens to him or to people around him. And then he sort of like has to get out of his like utopian life and just has to like go berserk. Um, that's kind of the shtick of all of his films. And no one does that better than him. Like he just has this kind of like smoldering intensity that he has. And he's very unusual in the sense that he's an action star, but he's very soft spoken. Like he has like this very slow lumbering quality to him. He's not like nimble and fast footed and like doesn't speak fast, and he just has this sort of like softness to him, which I think he gets from Dharmendra. But it's interesting because he's also an action star, and he has scenes like he'll like break open the iron bars of his own strength or whatever. So it's like very interesting. It doesn't His roles are never caricaturish to me, because his demeanor is so soft and sort of son of the soil, and then he goes nuts, and then it's like, wow, it's great. He's also very easy on the eyes.
I feel like what you're saying is definitely not the impression I have of him in some
Yeah,
ways. Like you're
he's
presenting
very
a much more
underrated.
you're presenting a much more nuanced version of him than I
Yeah,
feel is the persona.
yeah.
So I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I think he suffers a little bit from a similar thing that someone like Shah Rukh Khan suffers from, but like on a different scale, which is that Shah Rukh is so famous for like his big showy like Karan Johar movies and everything, that people forget the smaller films he's done, which I would say are actually his best performances. Like Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na is probably his best performance, but no one talks about it. Or they don't talk about Ahsoka. They talk about K3G and Kank and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, because those are the big giant films or DDLJ, obviously. But those are actually not his best roles. He's just gotten kind of slotted into this like Dharma and Yashraj big production thing. It's the same thing with Sunny Deol. I think Ghayal, Ghatak, the small role in Damini, Gadar, I think those films made him like a huge star with like mass appeal. I think at his height, he was a bigger star than Dharmendra ever was, because Dharmendra never attained the heights that Sunny Deol did as like a star. Like there's this saying that Punjab mein do cheeze chalti hai, dhol or deol. Like dhols and deols, like Punjab, Haryana, that entire north belt is like, these are Sunny Paji fans. They even call him Sunny Paji. And the films that really show what an exceptional actor he is are films like Yatim, and which is my favorite Sunny Deol film, and Betab and Ghayal and things like that. It's not the stupid 80s shtick that everyone did. It's kind of like if people saw the crap that Shashi Kapoor did in the 80s, then they would think that that's Shashi Kapoor. But like you have to see New Delhi Times and stuff like that to see what an actor Shashi was. So you can't really watch crap like Jeet or whatever and form an opinion of Sunny based on that. You have to see his really amazing performances to really appreciate him. And I actually think he's a far stronger actor than Dharmendra was. I think Dharmendra was a star. Dharmendra was a star, and Sunny is an actor who also became a star. But I don't think Dharmendra has never blown me away with his acting like Sunny
Oh,
has.
yeah, I
You
feel like
know,
very controversial opinions, so I can't wait to
I
see what.
don't think it is among people who've seen Sunny's movies, because with Dharmendra, what movies of his has he done where his acting was spectacular? I can think of only two, Anupama and Satyakam. That's it. He's not that great in most of his films. Like, yeah, he's entertaining and enjoyable in Sholay, but that's not great acting. He's also horrific in most of his 80s crap that he did, like, the Jitendra era. That's not good acting either. He was more versatile than Sunny. I'll give him that. Like, he's
Mm,
very good as a romantic hero. He's good in comedy. He can do a lot of he can do a lot of things that stars are supposed to do. He looks great in a suit. He looks great sipping champagne with Feroz Khan. Sunny in a suit drinking champagne would be very like, it would be very like, there would be a lot of cognitive dissonance.
yeah.
But Sunny's acting is far better. He's not versatile. Sunny cannot do comedy. He's very awkward in his romantic scenes. He obviously cannot dance. This is a Deol problem. And he's not, you can't place him in like urban metrosexual roles, which is hilarious because Dharmendra is actually the one who's from a village.
Right.
Dharmendra was born and
Right.
raised in a small village in Punjab who won a talent contest and moved to Mumbai. But he can play a guy in a tuxedo with a bow with champagne. Like, it's so crazy to me. And Sunny Deol, who is literally from the suburbs of Mumbai, born and raised, looks far more at home in a village. And I'm just kind of like, what is this weird, like, role reversal thing? But yeah, I love his movies. There's no one like Sunny Paji to me.
What did
But
you
Betab and
what do you think spoke to people about him? Like what do you think?
I
Yeah,
think
why?
he's so raw. He's
Mm.
raw. He's very emotionally honest. His scenes, like, the big, he's very good at monologues. He's very good at like the soliloquy, so he's very good at like standing in the middle because he has so much screen presence and charisma. He has an impeccable dialogue delivery. His amazing diction in Hindi. So when Sunny Deol stands in the middle of a big scene, like say in the courtroom scene in Damini, or in the middle of like a field and there's people around him or whatever, and he delivers that dialogue, it's a gut punch, and you can see people in the theaters responding to that and like whistling and clapping, because it's very gratifying. It's like
Mm.
larger than life and it's cinematic. And the directors he worked with, like JP Datta, Rajkumar Santoshi and Sunny are like a tight partnership. They always gave him those very strong dialogues that I think resonated with like the middle class and the lower middle class. For example, that scene in Damini where he talks about what a mockery justice is, and the judiciary is, where he says Tariq pe Tariq, dates upon dates. That's all you people are capable of doing. That is a frustration that every single middle class Indian has experienced,
Sure.
because that it is a mockery. And so when he is voicing that, you feel it. You have been through that same frustration yourself. It's not unusual in India for court cases, normal court cases, to go on for like 15, 20 years. So his because he always sort of plays the common man. He never plays anyone elite, he never plays anyone rich. He always plays common men, and he always portrays people where either the government has failed them, or the police has, or the judiciary has. Someone somewhere has dropped the ball, and now he's paying for it, and he's not going to take it lying down. So when he makes that big speech, it you feel like you're being heard. The audience feels like he gets it,
Mm.
in a way that none of these like slick, pretty, beautiful designer label movies, like the Kejo movies and Yash Chopra movies, those movies don't give a shit about the common man. I mean, Kala Pathar does, but otherwise they don't. So they don't, those are like rich people with rich people problems. Sunny Deol's movies are about middle class and lower middle class people and their problems, which frankly I am far more interested in. And I think the audience kind of gets the frustration. So I think he sort of voices the common man.
I mean, yeah, team does not really seem to be about an everyday problem.
No, but I mean, it does a little bit, in the sense, again, it's talking about how easy it might be to frame someone in India, or how
Mm.
hard
Okay.
it is to get past. Because like the whole, like in that movie, I don't know how much you've seen so far, but like for
I read a
example,
plot summary, so I know what's coming.
yeah. So, I mean, in Yatim, for example, every societal structure that should be helping him out fails him.
Right.
Every single one. So it's like there's no social safety net for a person like him. And it doesn't matter what he does. Like there's a scene where he graduates from the police academy, and Vijendra Khadge is like giving him his gold medal. And he says that, you were top of your class. So like, why aren't your parents here? And then he says, my father's name is so and so. And Vijendra Khadge goes, I actually know your father, and he doesn't have a son.
Yeah.
So then he says, okay, you're right, I'm an orphan. So it's kind of like, at no point with society let him forget what his questionable parentage is.
Mm.
And that's also a comment on the fact that it's like, it doesn't matter how modern and progressive you are, or how modern and progressive society gets, you're always going to be shown your place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you try to rise, there is always someone who's going to try to push you down, and that builds resentment.
Mm.
And then there's the whole like sexual harassment angle, which the first time I saw it really shook me, because I think, with the exception of Etraz and Arman, I think this is the only movie I've seen where there's a woman who is attempting to sexually harass or exploit a man. And it's done. Sujata Mehta plays that role so well. She is like, the temptress, and she's so beautiful, and she's not caricaturish at all. She's this young wife who's sexually frustrated because she married Kulbhushan Kharbanda for like money, I suppose. And she does it so well. Whereas when you watch movies like Etraz or Arman, it's kind of like, it's a caricature, and it's kind of like, whatever. But this one is almost like, because what do you do if you're falsely accused of sexual harassment by the woman who's supposed to be your stepmom? I mean, hopefully someone will believe you, but ultimately it's he said, she said.
Yeah.
So that's also like, you know interesting because what do you do when your own dad doesn't believe you?
Yeah.
So I mean, I can, like, obviously I've never been in the setting or the ethos that Yatim has, but I can understand that feeling that someone might have of being completely cornered and where nobody is looking out for you. That's probably a horrible feeling to have.
So is he sort of in your opinion, is he one of the inheritors of Angry Young Man?
For sure, 100%. For sure. I think he just maybe never got the kind of writing that Amitabh Bachchan did. Amitabh Bachchan owes a tremendous debt to Salim Javed. They're really the people who propped him up and made him who he is. He would be nothing without the scripts they wrote for him. I think if Sunny Deol had had access to that kind of writing, I think he would have been Amitabh's successor. But I think given the kind of scripts he got and the kind of directors he got, I think he made a really good name for himself. I mean, Ghayal itself is one of the most amazing movies, and his movie titles are always so like raw. Like Ghayal literally means wounded, and Yatim means orphan. They're very raw. These are not like stupid little issues this person is facing. It's like heavy stuff. It's like strap in for the ride. And Betab is just, it's just a pretty movie. It's like a typical like Romeo Juliet, rich girl. And Amrita Singh is hysterical in this movie, by the way. She is such a doll. Oh, I wanted to tell you that in our hair Olympics, I know Dimple Kapadia will always be the winner of the hair Olympics, but Parveen Babi would be number 2. I nominate Amrita Singh as number 3. She
I
has beautiful hair.
yeah, I have not seen very many of her films. In my head, she has big hair, which
Yeah,
is not necessarily the same thing, but I
right.
trust your judgment. You've seen more than I have.
Oh, so pretty.
I mean, again, the bar is very high here.
Yes, yes.
South Asia produces a lot of people with very lovely hair, so this is a tight field with
It really is the hair Olympics.
a lot of really strong competitors, in my opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, Betab is really cute too. I would suggest, like, if someone wants to see a Sunny Deol movie, but they want to go in with something a little more lighthearted and
Yeah.
fun and frolicky, then Betab is the way to go. It's just a young love story.
I was gonna watch that, but I couldn't get it with subtitles, and I thought,
Mm.
oh, I'm not sure my brain can function very well without right now. So let me go
I'm
for
surprised you found your theme with subtitles because on YouTube, I don't think it has them.
our friend Einthusen will provide.
Uh, okay, perfect. Yeah, so I would say my recommended Sunny Paji filmography
Yeah,
would be Betab, Yatim, Ghayal, Ghatak. I would say Damini. Are those my main Sunny Paji movies? Yeah, and then I would put Gadar, but not two, but like actual
right, right,
Gadar. So yeah, I think those would be. I like him in Trudev also. I think he's good in
right.
Trudev as well. Like he's my favorite part of Trudev.
Hey, Tub is on Tubi with subtitles for free. You'll have to
Okay,
see ads, but it's on Tubi for our friends in the US. So there you go. Maybe I'll watch it there.
yeah. Betab is at this point, I think, a 38-year-old or 39-year-old movie released in 1983. I mean, it still holds up for me.
So yeah,
Or is that 40? Is that 40
that's
years?
40.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a 40-year-old. The movie is 40 years old. It's still,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much. The songs are great. Dharmendra actually said, because it's a Dharmendra production, it's Vijayta Films. He actually said that he credits Adi Burman, um, Lata Mangeshkar, and Shabir Kumar with Sunny's superstardom because it is very first movie. That song Jab Hum Jawan Honge, which is picturized on him and Amrita Singh, just shot him to stardom, and he sort of credits the success of Betab to like the music, which it still has. I was posting pictures from it on my Insta stories, and within seconds of me posting a picture from Betab, the song hadn't even come yet. I had like one or two messages where people were like, "I love the songs in that movie," and I was like, "Yeah, I know."
So when I first started watching Hindi films and was trying to learn more about, different stars of different eras, Sunny Deol and Sanjay Dutt, I got confused.
Mm. Oh,
And partly it's the SD initials, right?
yeah.
My brain was just not keeping up. But I think I still have a little bit of a sense of them being not interchangeable necessarily, but a
Mm,
little bit, and not quite the tight pairing of like Zenit Parveen, like how it's
yeah,
well, we can't talk about one without the other. Not quite like that, but they still are occupy a very similar place in my cat.
yeah.
I also have not seen a ton of either of their films. I guess I've seen more of Sanjay Dutt's films. Oof.
I like Sanjay as well, and I understand what you're saying. The main difference between them, as I see, well, first of all, Sanjay Dutt is not as good an actor as Sunny is, but also secondly, Sanjay Dutt played a lot of roles where he's like this urban tapori person. So
Right.
for example, if you see, I love his role in Bastav. I think he's so great in that movie. Bastav is probably my number one Sanjay Dutt movie, but I also like him in Sadak and films like that. He primarily played like these urban dudes, and he was always from Mumbai. He was never from any other city. He was
Mm,
always an urban person, and he was always like lower middle class, and he was always like street smart, and he's always someone who's shrewd and street smart from the get-go.
mhm.
Whereas, so you're kind of eased into it. It's always sort of like the seedy underbelly of the big city kind of vibe, and he's
Yeah.
always like a city slicker.
Yeah.
But whereas with Sunny Deol, the drama comes when you don't expect it, because he always lives in these like hamlets, and
Mm,
he's just minding his own business, whereas Sanjay Dutt is always in the thick of things. Like, there's bad things happening around him, and he's trying not to get sucked in, but he kind of does. So I associate Sanjay Dutt more with like gangster movies,
yeah.
and so they're not quite angry young man so much as he's just in the middle of a criminal enterprise.
Mm,
Whereas with Sunny Deol, it's more kind of like he's just minding his own business, and people can't leave him be, and then shit goes to hell. So it's like a different flavor. And with Sunny Deol's movies, there's more of a sense of like justice seeking
mm,
and indignation. There's always a lot of indignation, and so in some ways they're more satisfying, whereas
mm,
with Sanjay Dutt's films it's more like he's not really taking revenge on people, but like stuff is happening, but he's not necessarily fighting a system from the outside. He's kind of in the system, if that makes sense, and he's trying not to be as spoiled by it, but like he is spoiled by it. So there's a lack of naivete and innocence. Like he knows what he's doing. Whereas
mm.
with Sunny Deol's films, there's this whole arc of like, what the fuck is happening? What? And then he loses his mind. So it's more, to me, there's more tension in a Sunny Deol film, because you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no, he gonna lose his head. Do not do that to him. Whereas with Sanjay Dutt's films, it's kind of like there's not that much tension, because it's just happening.
Yeah.
So but I can see what you're saying. It's just the settings are very different, and I think the directors they work with are very different. Like Sanjay Dutt does more of the like Mahesh Manjrekar, Mahesh Bhatt. Like that's more kind of his territory. And then with Sunny Deol, it's more like Rajkumar Santoshi, JP Datta, like more of those kind of people. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're not that similar, really. It was just one of those like
Yeah,
similar enough that for someone who didn't know anything,
right.
a little like
Yeah, it's
tall.
not quite the Zenith Parveen thing. No, and they're both bad dancers, so.
Yes. Yeah.
My favorite is like all the films that Sanjay Dutt and Madhuri Dixit have done together, because they've done so many, and they give the same steps to him that they give her. And I'm like, use your brains. Why would you give him the same steps you give her? Like, give him
Down.
something
Yeah.
easy. Yeah. And he looks like he's struggling.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you? I was so curious to see what the good movie was that you chose from Rani, because we've already spoken about Aya and Paheli.
That's the problem. Yeah. So I actually,
Yeah,
you know, we'll get to that, but um, Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway.
I have not seen it, just
Okay.
FYI.
So it is based on a true story. Um, from what I can tell from my digging around in the last 24 hours, the film takes quite a few liberties and
Mm,
creates things that never happened.
okay.
I think that's important because the true story is terrible, no doubt. To be, all but alone in a foreign country, you've got two tiny kids, your husband is abusive
Oh,
and not not a very involved parent from what I understand. whatever your cultural background is, that's still difficult. I would
Mm-hmm.
having no interest in being a mother myself. I that sounds bad. That sounds hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then to have your kids taken away from you by a system that you probably don't understand very well. Like, I don't feel like I understand American child protective services, and I've lived here most,
Yeah.
right? So, like, that's a complicated thing, um, is terrible. And then I don't think this film really does it justice because the film becomes this kind of patriotic mishmash at the end. Like, the
Mm.
national anthem of India is playing under the final courtroom scene at the end of it.
Oh,
You're like,
okay.
I mean, an instrumental version, but still, you're like, calm down.
Yeah.
um, because there's something sort of about the histrionics of the film that
Mm.
do a service to the actual drama of this actual story. And so, for example, one of the things that is invented in the film, as far as I can understand, now I could be wrong about this, but I don't think so. Mrs. Chatterjee, through a network of other, I think, other South Asian women who are living in this town in Norway where she lives, who are familiar with what Child Protective Services is doing, give her information about where her children are being temporarily held. And it appears to be basically a slum, like some really
Oh.
trashed out apartment building with like whatever Norway's equivalent of white trash is,
Mm-hmm.
watching these kids. She sneaks into their house and takes the kids out from under the nose of two adults who are not paying attention. Now, somehow when the kids see her, she goes, holds her finger up to her mouth to say shush, and the kids follow it and like don't cry or react in any way. And you're like, the odds of this seem very slim. She
Mm-hmm.
takes them on a train across the national border into Sweden.
Okay.
So she's got a passport, but she takes them out. They go through the police check in the border control in Sweden, and then they catch her. And of course,
Okay.
so she has, and she keeps saying, you can't, how can you kidnap your own children? And you're like, girl, I know you understand that what you're doing is wrong. And yet the film, I think, wants us, I don't think the film is trying to say, look what she was driven to. I think
Mm.
saying she's right.
Mm.
I put my finger on why I feel that way. It's just sort of a tonal thing. So this movie is probably its heart is in the right place, but it just is, it's kind of a mess. And I went digging, or I asked people on Twitter what they thought, and I got a range
Mm.
of mixed opinions. No one said they thought the movie was great, but people said their opinions of her performance really ranged from what I could.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not going to tell you this film is an absolute utter waste of time, but like maybe watch it on a plane. But
Mm.
it's oversimplified. It doesn't, there are some really interesting things that could be done with it that aren't. So for example, one of the reasons the Child Protective Services give for taking the kids away is that the husband doesn't help out at home.
Oh.
Now, that could be an individual thing. That could be a cultural difference. It could be various factors, right? But they don't really get into that. And I think that would have been really interesting to look at because I think culture clash stories are really interesting. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to imagine, at least based on stereotypes, cultures more different than India and Norway,
Mm, yeah.
right? Those are pretty different ways of being in the world. And the film does do a good job at sort of setting up visually the difference. So like
Mm.
say the sunshine is pale, it's not freezing cold in the movie, but they've got big coats on some of the time.
Yeah.
The Child Protective Service people are all these like Game of Thronesian women villains who are like very tall with slicked back hair and they're blonde and they're like
Mm.
robot,
Severe.
very severe. I saw a review that said they look like Bond villains out of place. And I agree with that. Whereas in India, everyone's like, it's a little more chaotic and warm, and like the sun is golden, and like everyone's around and everything's outside on the street and everything. And I'm not saying those things aren't accurate. I've never been to Norway. I don't know, but I can
Right.
imagine to northern Germany, like maybe similar. So anyway, I feel like there's some interesting things that you could do with the culture clash story, but they don't really do them. And the gist
Yeah.
is kind of Norway bad, India good.
Right.
We don't meet any Norwegians who are on their side,
Right.
which also seems kind of unlikely. Um, if anyone knew what was going on. So I don't know. It's rough. Rani is, I think, okay in the film.
Okay.
I don't think she's not helped by the script. Like no one is in it is helped by the script. she goes a little ham, especially at the end, I would say, when the national anthem is playing and in the courtroom and stuff like that. And can we attribute that to this character having been pushed to the absolute limit and she's kind of lost it? Maybe, but maybe not. So I don't,
Right.
it's not Ronnie's best work by any means, but I also don't think it's probably her absolute worst. But this film is not, I can't really recommend anyone watch it. Like it's on Netflix in the US at least right now. It'd be very easy to watch, but I don't really think that you need to, even as a Ronnie mega fan such as me, like and she hadn't done any movies for 3 years, I think, or something
Yeah.
like that. So, I'm sad that this is the thing she came back with. Although I can understand why she would have wanted to do it. Also,
Right.
It's a Bengali woman. The real life woman is apparently quite short. Like she was
Hmm.
this little figure taking on the system, and
Mm.
he did a Sunny Deal in her corner, and instead
Right.
he sort of gets Jim Sarb, but then
Oh,
he plays one of the lawyers. He is very interesting in this movie. I think his role is interesting. So and there's a point in the film. What I need to say is this is one of those films that is like mothers are God, all mothers are great. It's automatically better to be with and I mean biological mothers, I should specify. All biological mothers are absolutely necessarily better than any other option, which
that
is
is.
just not true. It's not true. And they do have Jim Sarb be an adopted person himself. And
Hmm.
so there's like a little bit of a mention of that, but they don't really go into it. And I feel like that again would be more interesting. And I understand that if you're desperate, an argument you might make is like, but I'm their natural mother. Like I'm their
Right.
biological mother. They should be with me. And she's still breastfeeding at the point when they take
Mm.
like there's a scene of milk leaking and which I think is not often seen in films of any kind. Like that's
Right.
really interesting. But it's oversimplified in a way that doesn't do any justice to anything.
I think the main reason I stayed away from this film as much as I could is because, like I said, I don't necessarily watch movies, but I watch all the interviews and all the like behind the scenes
Right.
stuff because it just pops up on my Instagram. And every single interview of Rani Mukherjee's around the time that she was promoting this film, she goes on and on talking about being a mom, how important motherhood is to her, being a mother to Adara. Like it was a lot of that, and I was like, okay, this movie is not for me. It seems like it's just sort of like a Mother's Day
Yeah.
beam to motherhood for
They
three
lay that
hours, and
on
I was like,
really thick, and it's
yeah,
just not true. And not only is it not true, I think that's a very harmful message to put into the world.
yeah,
Like obviously in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of conversation on the internet about what social responsibility does art have in relation to the film Animal, which neither you nor
mm,
have been willing to watch. And I'm sorry, I think art does have some social response. And I'm not sorry, actually. I think
same.
it does have some social responsibility because I think each person has some social responsibility, and art
Hmm.
is made by people and funded by people and consumed by people and whatever. It is not art's only function necessarily. It does not have to be its biggest function, but I do think there is some in all things that all people create, more or less. Um,
Hmm.
that makes you tired, then I don't know, welcome to 2023. Everything
Right.
sucks. More of us need to take more responsibility. So I don't that might actually be my biggest criticism of this film is that it's putting
Mm.
out there a message that is not helpful.
Right. So I'm curious, like, what exactly happened in the court case? Like, why were the children taken away? I feel like there was some sort of mental illness angle, or am
Yes,
I
so they
imagining
say
it?
that she is unfit and depressed. And
Okay.
I can imagine that she was depressed because
Right.
the life that she has is hard with an abusive, and it even seems hard before
Mm.
you find out her husband is abusive. So I get it. Like she's harried. She probably is not sleeping great. She's stuck in a house
Yeah.
time by herself. She doesn't really seem to have any friends. She's friendly with some of the moms at the school, but one of them narcs on her, for example, or like at least in the film, the older kid has made a project for school and she forgets to bring it with them. And then the teacher's like, well, how is he supposed to learn the parts of a tree if you left his tree project at home? I'm like, you got the internet. Can you like put up a picture of a tree? Like go outside and look at a tree. Norway has trees. Like,
Right.
so that it's pretty cartoonish in some ways.
Right.
Yeah. So they're saying that in the film, the arguments presented are that hand feeding is the same as force feeding or something is bad in that way.
Okay.
that sleeping in the same bed with the parents is bad, uh,
Mm,
that she is depressed and that she is unfit, and that the husband isn't helping out at home. Um,
okay.
I believe those are and that the older child, which I think is actually true, was diagnosed with some kind of autism or being on the autism
Mm,
spectrum, and that they're not supporting him if sufficiently or something.
okay.
Yeah, so it's a mess of issues. I'm
So
not,
in real life, was these were the reasons why the children were removed from the
I,
woman's home and
that
put
is my
into.
understanding. Please feel free to
Okay.
correct me if you fit. I had a hard time finding enough facts about what really happened. The real life woman has written a book, which
Oh,
I don't intend to read, but so that her story is at least out there that came out last year. Um, and it is true in the meantime that they got divorced in real life, and she
mm,
actually goes on and gets a master's degree. She had a bachelor's in science of some kind, so she's not some like uneducated,
right,
rustic. um,
right.
and the film does kind of paint her as a little bit, but again, like if you're stressed out and depressed, like you can't access all the tools that you have in your toolbox, like that's part of why depression is so awful, is it stops you from accessing parts of yourself and doing things
Yeah.
and
I
things that
actually have a close friend that had been struggling with depression for a while, and despite everyone's attempts to try to get her to get therapy, she was very, very resistant to it. As in, she wouldn't like outright say no, but she would just make a lot of excuses and say she was very busy with her child and blah blah, and so she wouldn't get any help. And then she got pregnant a second time, and then she actually had, like, during that pregnancy, her doctor here in San Francisco essentially forced her into like depression treatment. And she, like, it was literally like medically mandated, because the doctor, her gynecologist, essentially said to her that if you're pregnant and you are depressed, then you can't look after yourself, you can't look after the fetus, and you can't look after your existing child if you do not. So I was actually very happy that she was kind of, the doctor was like, yeah, we're not letting this depression go untreated. And I think she had to basically even check in with her mental health professional, and she was part of like a therapy group as well, for moms with postpartum and stuff, until her second child was almost like 2 or 3 years. So they really took it very, very seriously. And I was so glad to hear that, because she resisted attempts from everybody in her family, her husband, but when her doctor was just like, yeah, this is not going to happen, we're not going to let this go unchecked. And then when your doctor says that, you kind of have to, you follow through.
the why this woman was not better taken care of by the medical system in Norway
Mm,
is not clear to me. That didn't come
yeah.
up. So a place with such strong socialized medicine,
Mm,
maybe it's not actually, but that's the Scandi dream, right?
yeah.
Compared to the US or India. Um, so that's not clear to me. And maybe her husband didn't want her to and she was afraid. I don't know. It doesn't really come up that I understood. So yeah,
it
but
feels it feels a lot like a missed opportunity. Like, I feel like if they had perhaps just stuck to the facts, then it could have been an interesting movie that could have spoken
yeah.
about, the complicated nature of
Oh,
parenthood.
and they also in the movie there's this kind of little side mention. Again, they don't do much with it, that the Norwegian government is basically running um it is taking immigrants children from them as basically as a like population increasing scheme or something. They don't really say why, but the
How would that
implication is that
work
I
even?
don't know, that the Norwegian government is joyfully and frequently taking immigrant children from their
Right.
uh and from what I read online, when the book at some point one of the big newspapers carries a letter from like the Norwegian consulate being like, yeah, so
Right.
trying to clarify their position a little bit, but it's hard to imagine a setting in which this seems like this was a good idea to take those children away for so long. And then
Mm.
so then eventually this happens in real life too. They give the children to the husband's brother,
Okay.
who in the movie lives with the husband and the brother's parents. I'm not clear in
Mm,
real life. But then and that's back in India. And so
mm,
then the main woman goes and it can sue to try to get the kids from them.
okay.
And then the in-laws in the movie are like these horrible caricaturish, like in it for the money because the brother takes money from someone in the Norwegian government to take the kids. And like you see them with a new car and a new TV and on their
Uh,
it's really quite horrible. So that's interesting too. And it is interesting to me that the Norwegian government did give the in real life, it sounds like did give the kids to the husband's brother,
like a next of kin sort of.
especially if it's known that the husband was abusive. Now, I don't know at what point that became known in real life, but um yeah. Well, and right, and now the from the most recent updates I could find is in real life, the kids are living with her parents and she in Calcutta and she is working in Noida. So
Mm.
these kids have been bumped around a
So
lot.
she still doesn't technically have like custody of her children in a
She
way.
does. She's just not living with them at the moment
Oh,
those updates were coming. She does.
okay.
She does have custody of them, as I understand. I don't know where her
Interesting.
husband is. I think he's in Norway still. So I don't
Oh.
know. I don't
I did read, like the only thing I read was like I think on Twitter or something, the Norwegian Consul General to India had written like a letter when the
yeah,
movie came out or
yeah,
something like
that's
that.
it.
And I
Yeah.
read it, but it was just sort of very like vague and just sort of like a we don't approve of this movie sort of thing. But I was like, okay. I think the whole thing like surrounding this case is everything just sounds very murky.
Yeah.
Like it's very he said she said. It's
Yeah.
very how much of that is culture clash. I
Yeah.
know that there have been like a lot of allegations of racism. I don't know to what extent those are true or not true. I have never been to Scandinavia. I don't know how they treat their immigrants. I have no idea. I don't like it just seems very murky, and I feel like probably it was a missed opportunity. Like sometimes a real life story is interesting enough that you don't really need to dilute it by adding all of this additional masala. So I
And
wish they just
maybe
kept it the way it was.
and maybe don't make a feature film out of it. If you maybe a documentary, if the participants are
Yes.
like Rani could narrate it or
Mm.
produce it or whatever. I also get that maybe she was excited to do something outside of the Yash Raj film stable, and this is fairly, in some ways, fairly different than what they do and what she has done with them. So maybe, it did kind of remind me of her turn in No One Killed Jessica,
Mm.
where she is,
Yeah.
those two characters are different, but there was something about the like, I'm fighting for something aspect
Yeah.
that seems kind of
Or like
similar.
Mardani or something.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, we know she gravitates towards those kind of roles
she
because
does
often
like,
those are very meaty and she can
yeah.
like prove her.
And Mardani is definitely one of my favorite of her performances. No One Killed Jessica is not, but I don't think she's awful. I have never seen Rani Mukerji be bad. Now, I have not
Yeah.
seen a lot of her earliest films, but even in things like Gulam, I think she's adorable. I
Hmm.
think she brings, obviously she's very strong in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, which
Hmm.
not set up in her favor, really, that character, right? But it has to be enough that you don't necessarily hate Rahul automatically and everything. But so I don't, she's probably had some very lucky choices in her life, perhaps because of her Nepo status. Um, but I think that she typically does very solid work, if not.
Hmm.
And I love her in comedy, which this is not. Obviously,
Right.
like there's nothing funny that happens in this movie. So this film does not play to her best strengths, in my opinion.
Right.
Um, but
But I can see how, in theory, she might have thought it
yes,
would.
yes.
Because it really does sound like one, like if you just had to pitch it to an actor and just be like, it's this one tiny little petite person, a mom who takes on the entire judicial system of
Mhm.
and country of Norway to get her children back. I mean, it sounds like it's a very
Yeah.
like David Goliath
Oh yeah.
story, right? Like I can see how she would be excited by it. But it seems like it did. Who's the director of this film?
It is, let's see, um, Chibber, who did Mary Dad Keep. Nope. I'm so sorry, I don't have this information at my Ashima Chibber,
I have no idea who this person is.
who did, and is a woman director, so that's cool.
Hmm.
Um, she was an AD on things like Chuck Day.
Hmm.
She did uh she's done some TV. Yeah, Mary Dad Kimaruti is her major film before this, I think. Yeah, other than that, it's TV shows.
Oh, okay.
She was an AD on Rockstar, Kites, Chuck Day, PRK Side Effects, and another film I've never heard of. So she's, definitely some experience for sure.
Right. Okay. Who
Yeah.
plays the husband? I'm so curious.
It is a Bengali actor who I've seen in a bunch of stuff and who's really good. And his name is um, Anirban Bhattacharya. And
The
from my
name rings a bell. I may have seen him
I
in
don't know that
something.
he's done any other Hindi films. I can't remember.
Okay.
He does a lot of theater, but I have seen
Mm.
him. He's been he's a Bomkesh. He plays Bomkesh on TV,
Mm.
either a web or a TV version, and he is Dracula in the movie Dracula Sir, which I watched like a year ago or so. It's kind of an interesting Bengali film. So yeah, and Barun Chanda plays the a judge at the end. And when he showed up, I was like, thank you. This is the like solid, calming, no nonsense presence this movie needs. And poor guy, like he's got the national anthem playing under him too. But
Right.
I was very glad to see him. And like there's something he brought the gravitas, and there was the lawyers are sort of doing their courtroom theatrical stuff. Although Jim Sarb doesn't do much of that. He kind of plays it like,
Yeah, he's not hammy at all. I do like
no, he
Jim Sarb.
wasn't hammy. And it was interesting to see his character kind of, t- you're never quite sure what he's going to do, which I did
Mm.
enjoy. So it's not courtroom histrionics exactly, but
Which I feel like that's just a general comment on Jim Sarb in general, isn't it? Like with his
I,
roles, you just never know what he's gonna
I did
do.
not expect to see him in this film. Also, I forget if I've talked about this with you. There is a Bengali actor who appears in Hindi films, and he's in Mardani. He has as Rani's husband, Jishu Sengupta, who is
Mm.
everywhere, and he's in South Indian films as well. I don't know
Oh.
who his agent is, but this whoever his agent is probably not getting paid enough because this person has gotten him everywhere. Where was Jishu Sengupta in this movie? Like he should have been the husband or the brother or a lawyer or something. I was shocked. But
Maybe he was in the
no,
South doing some South Indian films.
busy, I guess. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, there's no reason to watch this movie, but if you are on a plane and you are bored, sure, you could watch it. Like, but you don't really need to. I wish I could say read the book instead. I don't know. Um,
Right.
I will say I found the Reddit thread about this film very
Mm.
interesting. I very rarely turn to Reddit because in my experience, it's usually just a cesspool, but I know you have good
I
experiences.
love Reddit. Hmm.
There were a lot of people chiming in who were like, I am Indian, I live in Scandinavia, or I live in Norway, or whatever, who were
Okay.
weighing in about it. And I thought the responses I was seeing were all very reasoned, and they were like, here's why, from the Norwegian government's perspective, it was correct to remove those children.
Mm.
That was kind of interesting. So, but it is just sad and horrible, and I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of, I
It
mean,
also made me wonder. I was like, if her husband was actually like abusive or whatever, why is he still working in Norway? Because then why wasn't he like deported or something?
that's a
Usually,
good
if you,
question. Yeah.
right,
I
like
don't know
he's
the
still like that's weird. Like you remove the children from their custody, but the man is still allowed to live there, but he's not deported. Like
Well, and
that's shady.
he has no source of income if they remove him. So, they're there for his job. So I
Right.
I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
That's another, this is a thing that I think about a lot in a whole bunch of movies is never rely solely on a man for your income, for your livelihood. It just and I know there's some privilege in saying that, and it's not always possible, but if at all possible, never rely solely on another person,
Hmm.
especially your romantic partner, for your livelihood, because we just see it go horribly wrong so many times, not just in film. So I kept thinking about that. I was like, if she had
Yeah.
she could so much more easily. Now they might have still taken her kids because if she was working, that might
Right.
have been even worse than being an at-home mom who wasn't living up to their standards. I don't know. I don't know how. I feel like Norway is probably better
Right.
about that than the US is certainly. But it just it was very stressful. Um, So I'm looking at
Yeah.
Rani Mukerji's filmography to try to choose my
Mm,
performances. Aya is probably my favorite performance. We've talked about it a lot.
amazing.
Haley is another one up there. Mardani for me is way up there. Now, I have not seen Mardani 2. I need
Mm-mm.
to. I've only seen the first one, which I really love. Um, and in that one, I feel like she is the just the right amount of um I mean, so Ronnie does some of these roles where she is the hero.
Hmm.
It's not the heroine, she is the hero. So Mardani and Aya are the two major ones for me.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. But then at the same time, I do just really love her at comedy. She has a Lucille Ball energy that I really love. She,
Yeah.
she's a great dancer. She's I think she has good chemistry with a whole bunch of different people, and
Hmm.
not just romantically, but like she's a good, like I think she just is a star presence and an actor presence that I really enjoy.
Yeah,
Um,
like she and Preeti were such a good pairing with those like chori chori chupke chupke type of movies that they'd done for a while.
yeah. Um, I'm wondering if people compared this movie to Black, actually, because it does have a few things in common with Black, which is a
Mm.
movie that I probably would never rewatch because it was a lot. Um, Bunty or Bubbly is definitely a
Oh
favorite of mine for
yeah.
her. Again,
I
lots.
actually am one of the few people who enjoyed Bunty or Bubbly too. I thought it
I
was funny.
I enjoyed that too. Yeah, it's really funny. I
Yeah.
was listening to one of our other podcast episodes today, and we talked about that film a little bit. I forget what our main theme was.
I love Potbellied Seth sitting in the thing with Rani Mukerji coloring his hair and like he has the gum chat. Like that was so cute. That was my favorite like scene in the film.
Um, let's see. This is an unpopular opinion. I do
Hmm.
not hate Laga Chunari Main I know a lot of people hate that
Mm,
film.
I do.
I don't think it's a brilliant film, but I think it's perfectly fine, and I think she's okay in it. Like the problems with that film are not her or any of the other actors,
Mm.
in my opinion. Again, I'm not going to tell anyone they need to watch it, but um Dil Bole Hadipa is not my favorite, but it's cute enough, right? And the whole like
I haven't seen it. I've only seen the
processing
songs.
aspect is interesting. She's lovely in Talash, right? That's
Mm.
not about her, but as kind of a supporting or secondary lead woman, she's really
She was
strong.
great in it.
I really like her segment in Bombay Talkies. I think she's
Mm.
very good in that. Oh, Hitchki. I love Hitchki. Have you seen that?
I did not see it.
It's really cute. I mean, it's a teacher
Okay.
movie. It follows
Yeah.
exactly the beats you expect it to. It's like a sports movie in that way. That,
Yeah.
that formula works for me. I come from a
Right.
couple of teachers like that. I love it. It's really, really cute. I fully recommend it. Um, Mardani too, I haven't seen, and like that's kind of the end of her, Bunty or Bobbly too, and then
Mm.
that's kind of it for Rani. Um, God, the 2010s, she just hasn't done very much. So
No?
um, I would love to
She's
see.
busy being YRF Ki Malkin. That's what
I
people on
guess,
Reddit call
yeah,
her.
I guess so. And I don't watch a lot of interviews, as I've said, but even the clips of her in a lot of the roundtables and stuff that I've seen, I just want to be like, girl, stop talking. Just say no. Don't go to those. You seem not to be able to control yourself. I thought she was okay in the Yash Raj documentary, actually. She didn't
Yeah,
say
she was fine in that.
bananas there, but yeah, she needs to stop talking. But as an actor, I really, really like her. And I do not feel that I have seen any other women do what she can do,
Mm.
all of the things that I think she can do. However, maybe some of them haven't had the chance. So
Mm.
enough of them had enough chance to show themselves in comedy, maybe not, so yeah. So yeah, for my very favorite Ronnie performances, it's gonna be Aya, it's gonna be Bunty or Bubbly, Paheli, Talash. Like no
Yeah.
surprises there for any. And I need to see some more of her very early films. And there's some like comedies with Govinda that maybe are delightful. I don't know. That doesn't sound like my bag, but I'll watch them at some point. But
I've
love
seen her very like first two movies or something, and they're absolute dreck, but she is so good in them. Like you can see that spark in her, where it's like, like I saw that terrible movie, Raja Ki Aayegi Barat, which I think is her first Hindi film. Her
uh,
first movie was actually Bengali,
yeah.
but Raja Ki Aayegi Barat is so bad, so regressive, has such a horrible message in it. But she was good. Like she had such a spark, and she was so young in that.
Someone in the review for Mrs. Chatterjee said that she was I think the quote was something like speaking Bengali like a foreigner and then speaking Hindi like Mamta Banerjee. And I don't know exactly what that means, obviously, but that
Right.
I was realizing I don't think I've ever heard Rani speak Bengali before because I haven't seen that
Mm.
Bengali film of hers. So that because in the beginning I'm like, why do I not quite under? Oh, that's right, that's not Hindi. That's why I don't quite understand what she's saying. So
I've heard her speak Bengali in like interviews a little bit, and then on Kaun Banega Crorepati, because she
yeah.
came and Amitabh Bachchan made her say some things in Bengali, and she was funny in that. And I think she said she spoke in Bengali in KBC when Shah Rukh was hosting as well. I watch more non-movie things of actors than I watch their actual movies, so I know all of this like trivia and like nonsense information than the actual movies themselves. So you can always rely on me for like filmy Jeopardy.
I, as much of a slog as our two films were, I'm glad we did this because I think looking at the some of the worst of what your favorites do is
Yeah,
actually kind of important in shaping your just kind of challenging yourself to think in different ways and all that kind of thing. And I don't suggest that anyone spend their free time punishing themselves, but
no,
if you feel that there might be something of merit in one of their because it does well, Gadar 2 sounds like it has nothing to recommend it. This I feel
no.
like had a few potential things to recommend it, which it did not follow up on. But like, I'm trying to think of some other good examples of quite bad movies by people who are generally good. And like that's kind of a fun thing to think
Shah
about.
Rukh has a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
Zero, Happy New Year, Jab Harry Met Sejal. I love Shah Rukh, but there's a whole list of his films that I just cannot watch. Jab Harry Met Sejal is one of the most unwatchable and horrible movies I've seen in my like. I hate it so
I
much.
would gladly rewatch any of those before watching Mrs. Chatterjee again, though, I have to say.
Zero as well.
Yeah,
Okay, because Zero is like Drek.
not good. Uh, oh, that's a rough question.
I know.
And I've certainly sat, like as I've tried to watch as many Shashi Kapoor films as I can possibly find, I've definitely seen some that aren't, and I haven't even touched most of his like late 80s, 90s police inspector dad roles. I'll get there eventually, but I haven't seen, but like he's in, so I think this may have actually been the first Shashi Kapoor film I saw, or certainly one of the earliest ones. There is a really bad Mithun film made by quite a few of the same people who did Disco Dancer called Commando.
Oh dear.
And Shashi plays like an army captain in that,
Okay.
which he made no impact on me whatsoever when I first saw it. And then I have that movie on DVD. Don't ask me why. And I got it out and I was flipping the box over and I was like, is that oh, because we know how the Kapoor genes are, right? So like you can spot a Kapoor, and I'm like, is that a Kapoor? Is that Shashi? And it was like I had totally not tracked that was him. So that that may not even be his worst movie. It probably isn't, frankly. He's barely in it, but
Right.
like Mithun and Shashi, like those two things don't go together in my
It's
head.
like oil and
That's,
water. Like that's like wrong. You
right.
can't have
It's
those two in
weird.
the frame.
But
No.
it's like how that when we were talking about the movie with Govinda dancing on the big clock, and like Shashi's in that movie, for example, which is
Right.
to think about. But, he keeps on doing those movies.
Well,
Yeah.
someone left us a comment the other day. I don't even remember which episode. I think they were talking about Parveen Babi. Yeah, in the Parveen episode, and it was so funny. This person mentioned that there was a movie that has Shashi and Parveen in it, and they said Ahuti or Suhag, and I thought there was a movie called Ahuti or Suhag. And I was like, that sounds horrible. Because like Ahuti is like sacrifice, and Suhag is, of course, like Suhag. And then I was like, that almost sounds as bad as what Beth and I like to say would be the worst movie ever, which we want to make a movie called Tyag or Izzat because I hate Tyag and you hate Izzat. So I was like, that sounds almost as bad as Tyag or Izzat. And then this commentator said, no, 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 it's not Ahuti or Suhag. Ahuti is a movie and Suhag is a movie. I was like, okay, but that still doesn't make it better. They still sound terrible. Like, I don't want to watch Ahuti or Suhag or Ahuti or Suhag. Like,
I love it's not even a micro genre, it's a macro genre of Hindi films that are noun and noun. And they're
yeah,
often in that font that's bright yellow and it looks like rocks.
it does. I
Love
love
that
that
thing.
font. That's the Sholay font.
Yeah. And it's
That is
not on
also the
fire.
Kala
It's like,
Patthar font, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. it comes in an era I like, and then it just stays right on. I think through the 90s, right? For
Should
within
we
the
have
over.
asked Paula to have made our logo with that font instead of like the decent one that she chose for us? There's also that other font, you know, the font where it looks like blood that's dripping.
Oh yeah, I love
All
that.
the Ramsey movies have that font, but I've also seen films that are not horror that have that same font. And I'm like, okay, but this is a love story. Why does this have the bloody font? That makes no sense.
Coon or something.
खून और इज्जत खून और इज्जत की आहुति का त्याग.
These all sound real.
You know those magnetic poetry things that you find at Barnes and Noble? We should make one that's Hindi, and then you can just craft your own like terrible 80s movie and just like create poetry out
If
of
we
it. That
give
would
you
be
a
so
few
great.
other, if we give you some verbs, then you can have a couple bits of shouty dialogue. My
Yes.
So Kitagawa is a film I've only seen once, but there are passages in there when I swear Amitabh, and I forget which version of him, is just shouting sentences that are basically noun and noun, noun and noun. And I was like, even I understand all of this, and that's not good.
Movies like Kudakawa, you don't actually need subtitles. So
Right.
Paula watches a lot of Hindi movies with my cousin. Like they watch movies all the time that don't have subtitles. And like I'm kind of like I get it at this point. I'm like, why do you even need a subtitle to watch that movie? Like, surely you understand it at this point. The expressions alone should tell you.
We have a student worker where I work on campus who is from Agra. And I met him
Oh,
for the first time the other day, and he was, like, you watch Indian movies? And like we were talking
right.
about this, and then he asked me, of course, do I understand Hindi? And I said, no, not really, but I've learned quite a bit from film, but mostly I have this very film-based vocabulary that's not
Yes.
actually very useful, except for films. And he was asking me for examples. So I was, I said, Mary Pass Mahe to him, and he was
Yeah.
like, oh. But I was thinking about all these like shouty
Yeah.
phrases. Someone is ever bellowing about blood and sweat and rocks and lies and ghosts and
Mm.
I'm like, I'm with you. I know exactly
It's
what this
just unfortunately you work in an academic setting, so those words are not particularly like useful for your, like now if you were an ER doctor, I
is.
think it would be great because you would be like a trauma surgeon, Dr. Beth Watkins, and you would be going on and on about like blood and guts and like spilling people's coon.
Love
And
it. Oh,
it would then make so much sense. It would be like, well, of course she likes that
or if
stuff.
I were like a coroner or a
Mm.
detective or any of
A
those.
mortuary person, a murderer, like, because that can be a career. No.
Yeah, as we've discussed, museums are not well represented in Hindi cinema, so I don't have a lot, not picked up much that's just like
Except for Lakin, which had a museum professor. He's an archaeologist with the
Lakin
Indian
and
Archaeological Service.
um Total PR, Total Magic with Rani and Saif. She takes the kids to a museum and they have a whole
Okay.
song in the formerly known as the Prince of Wales Museum in Bombay.
Oh, okay.
Dance through there. And I was like, I was so delighted when I saw that because I'm like, not only is there a song in a museum, it's my favorite. It's Rani, who I love more than anything. And like the artifacts, like the things come out of the cases and dance with them. It's really cute.
Oh, okay. That's nice. So, have you ever watched any of the Real Housewives shows?
No,
They're very trashy,
it sounds
but I
awful.
love Real House. I love Real Housewives of Atlanta. And at one of the weddings, in one of the episodes, the wedding happened at the Fernbank Museum in Atlanta, and they got married under the big Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil. And I was like, this is the best wedding ever. It was so nice. It was like all the dinosaur fossils, and then they set up all the chairs over there, and I was like, what? This is the best wedding. So yeah,
I
big
wonder
fan
how
of
much that
museums.
costs.
Oh, it's a Real Housewives. So money just flows like water. It doesn't matter. Then they file for bankruptcy. So.
One of my friends had her wedding reception on the terrace of the Shed Aquarium in Chicago.
Oh,
That was
that's
she did a little
amazing.
bit, that was really, she had done a ton of work with them, and so she got a little bit of an in to get her reception
Oh,
in there.
wow.
So,
Oh, so they don't actually do like private events because like a
I'm
lot
sure
of
they do.
museums do.
I'm sure they do.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Well, I think that concludes this episode. I have no idea what we're going to title it. Um, I guess it was like good, the bad, and the ugly of our favorite stars. But Let us know what you think about the movie choices that we discussed. Tell us what you think. Gadar 2 is terrible. Please don't watch it. But I do recommend Betab and Yatim. I don't think that Beth is going to recommend that you guys watch Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway. But if you have seen it, then let us know what you think about that as well. And tell us what horrible films of your favorite film stars that you have seen. And did you think your favorite film star was still good in them? Or do you think that they were just dragged like the film was? Thank you for watching Filmi Ladies, and we will see you next week. Bye.